Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. Dana White announced UFC 291 Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2, and I wish he would have stopped right there, but it's for the BMF belt. And I believe there is a multitude of reasons the UFC is putting the BMF belt on the line at UFC 291, but I believe there is one main reason that really nobody is talking about. I mentioned it in my original video about UFC 291, where I primarily focused on the fights. I talked about the BMF belt briefly, but I said I would make an entire dedicated video on it. And we're going to talk about the multitude of reasons. We're going to talk about the main reason. We're going to talk about the card as a whole. And, to be honest, I know people are going to say, stop complaining. This is a great card. I hate that the BMF belt is on the line at UFC 291. You took an amazing card and you took a crap on it, Dana White. And this is a slippery slope. I mean, what are we, WWE now? And for those of you who don't know, maybe you're a newer fan, the BMF belt originated at UFC 244. I actually went there live. I spent money. I bought tickets. I went there a couple days early. I stayed in a hotel in New York. I went to the press conference. I went to the weigh-ins. The press conference was for 245. And I went to that card. And I hated it then as well. And what happened was UFC 244 was originally scheduled or targeted for Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 1. For whatever reason, that didn't come to fruition. You had Nate Diaz calling out Jorge Masvidal, saying he's the BMF. I'm going to challenge him. We're two of the BMFs in the UFC, and we're going to fight. And then Dana White said, you know what? Let's throw a title fight on the line at UFC 244. We're going to have Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal for the inaugural BMF belt. And at the time, I hated it. I thought it was cringy. I thought it was corny. But I said, look, if they're just doing it one time, it is what it is. I'll never forget going to the arena for the press conference. And you had Dana White originally, when he unveiled the BMF belt, he had the white gloves on. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so corny. Then you had The Rock coming out beforehand, before you had the UFC 245 press conference. You had The Rock come out with, I think he had the BMF belt. I can't 100% remember on that one. But he came out to his WWE song and he announced some movie about, some old MMA fighter or whatever. And that never even came to fruition. They had fake media members there asking him questions about a movie that they didn't care about. The fans didn't care about it. And then at UFC 244, I'm there live in the crowd. I got to listen to The Rock's theme song as he walks out with the BMF belt and then slings it up, WWE style. The whole time I was thinking, this is so bad. This is so cringy. Thank God this is one and done. Thank God this is one and done. Jorge Masvidal wins. Doctor stoppage. Talk about the least BMF way to win a fight. Doctor stoppage. And honestly, I didn't have a massive problem with the stoppage. The cut was bad. People complained about it. I would have liked to seen it go a little bit longer, but Nate Diaz's scar tissue was crazy. And I thought, okay, we're done with this. We're washing our hands with this. And then you have Jorge Masvidal go out there and get 50-45'd by Kamaru Usman. Oh, but he's still the BMF. And then he goes out there and gets flatline KO'd by Kamaru Usman. Oh, well, he's still the BMF. Then he goes out there and gets 50-45'd by Colby Covington. Oh, he's still the BMF. Then he goes out there and gets beat up by Gilbert Burns for 3 rounds straight, 30-27, regardless of what Joe Rogan said. Oh, he's still the BMF. 4-fight losing streak since he beat Nate Diaz for the BMF belt. And he's still the BMF. And now he finally retires. He's going off to be a congressman now. And Dana White comes out on the same day as Francis Ngannou's groundbreaking contract signing with PFL. He's like, you know what? Francis Ngannou signed with the PFL. This is getting a lot of headlines. This is a massive contract. He's getting paid more than he would have gotten in the UFC. Looking like the UFC fumbled the bag on Francis Ngannou and screwed fans out of a potential Francis Ngannou-John Jones fight. What can we do? Quick, let's announce an entire main card for UFC 291, complete with a BMF belt. Let's announce UFC 292 before they even sign the contracts, making it Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley. And then maybe, just maybe, nobody will pay attention to Francis Ngannou's contract announcement anymore. That's what Dana White was thinking. And that's not the reason I'm getting to, but that's one of the reasons they announced it. They're like, Francis Ngannou's getting attention. We got to be petty and announce this. And the people cheerleading, a multi-billion-dollar company acting like they're 12 years old by trying to overshadow someone else's announcement, you're a clown if you think that way. It's just stupid. I don't really care. I'm not clutching my pearls over it. But to cheerlead that type of behavior of acting like a 12-year-old, and it just coincides with the fact, well, guess what? They're acting like a 12-year-old when they're announcing the BMF belt too. It's a fake belt. It is a WWE-style belt. That's all it is. It's meaningless. I love Dustin Poirier. I love Justin Gaethje. They're two of my favorite fighters. They're two of the most exciting fighters in MMA history. Definitely top 5 of all time. The BMF belt is a fake belt. It is a fake belt. It literally, for me, I think it's degrading to Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje to wrap a fake WWE-style belt around their waist when they've already had multiple title shots. Justin Gaethje just lost to Charles Oliveira 2 fights ago. He lost to Khabib in a title fight. Dustin Poirier, same thing. Lost to Charles Oliveira, lost to Khabib. Islam Makhachev's the current champion. But yet you're going to tell me they're the BMF? They're the BMF? You can't even say it. The UFC can't even say it. Baddest motherfucker. They can't even say that. And yet they're promoting this WWE-style belt. I can't stand it. Like, what is next? What is going on here? Is Justin Gaethje going to hide Hornswoggle underneath the cage, and then he's going to pop out with a shillelagh when Justin Gaethje starts losing? He's going to hit Dustin Poirier over the head with a shillelagh, and then there's going to be a DQ? Is that what's going to happen? Or is someone going to distract Herb Dean or distract Keith Peterson? Keith Peterson better not be the ref, because if Hornswoggle needs to distract him, he could just throw a pack of Marlboro Reds on the side of the cage. He'll be distracted. He could smack Dustin Poirier over the head with a shillelagh, and then that's the end of the fight. Next thing you know, Keith Peterson comes back. He has to wave it off. He's too busy over there looking at a pack of Marlboro Red, eating them like chips. And this is just a slippery slope. And I know people are going to say, just enjoy the matchup. I'm going to love this matchup. I'm going to watch this matchup. This is an incredible card in general. But to put a fake WWE belt on the line, it delegitimizes the division. It delegitimizes the sport. And I know there is a subset of fan, and it's a decent portion of the fan base who love the WWE style. They love the WWE antics. They love the fake belts. And I understand that's going to get them all excited, and they're going to cheerlead, and they're going to jump up and down and celebrate this, and they'll probably listen to, the old CDs that have all the WWE superstar theme songs on them. But this is supposed to be a legitimate sport. People already have a hard time. There's people who don't watch MMA who literally think it's the WWE as it is. And now you're delegitimizing it even more with a fake belt. A fake belt. Why don't we just do a ladder match? That would intrigue me more. Why don't we just do a ladder match? Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje 2 ladder match. Hang the BMF belt above the ring. Let's do that. That makes it compelling as well. Like, I understand, okay, maybe this draws in some casuals, but overall, I just think it's a net loss. And you look at the event, it's so good. It's so good. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje 2, so good. Doesn't need a BMF belt. Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira, incredible fight. Paulo Costa, Ikram Iliskirov, incredible fight. Then you have Tony Ferguson, Bobby Green, Michael Chiesa, Kevin Holland. You got Derek Lewis versus Marco Rogerio de Lima. And why are they putting Derek Lewis in Salt Lake City? He's going to gas out in the walkout. What are these decisions here? But this is a phenomenal card. And on top, you literally have the BMF belt, a fake style, WWE style belt. Like seriously, what is next? What is next? This is corny. This is cringy. In my opinion, I hate it. In my opinion, this is almost UFC 200 all over again. UFC 200, I know it fell apart at the end, but let's pretend it was still the amazing card it was. And it was still a decent card after the injuries and the positive tests from John Jones and whatnot. But they ruined that card by putting that piss-colored canvas on the, in the inside of the cage. It looked horrible. It ruined the whole fight card. In my opinion, this is a stain on UFC 291. This is a stain on an otherwise incredible fight. And I really, truly believe, and this is another reason, this isn't the main reason, but this is another reason I think they're doing it. I think they're doing it because they hope one day Conor McGregor will be fighting for that BMF belt, because he's never getting that undisputed belt. It ain't ever happening. It just makes no sense. Why can you win a belt that you can never lose? Jorge Masvidal lost 4 straight times. You know, under that logic, essentially, he lost it to Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman beat him twice, even flatlined him once, and then Kamaru Usman would have lost it to Leon Edwards. It's just stupid. We should have one belt in each division. The undisputed world title. I hate interim belts. I don't even want interim belts. And now we're doing this? This is just so corny, and I really do believe they're hoping, okay, Dustin Poirier or Gaethje wins the belt. Maybe Conor comes back and looks like a world beater against Michael Chandler, and then they're like, oh yeah, we can make Conor fight for the BMF belt. And I just think that makes it even worse. Honestly, if we're going to start, having this belt jump around, we're having a secondary belt. Now, why don't we have a hardcore belt? Why don't we bring in some steel chairs, some behind-the-scene action, I don't get it. What, are we going to start putting people through tables? Is Dustin Poirier going to go for a Boston Crab in this fight? I just don't get it. And if this isn't a 2-and-done, which it isn't going to be probably, they're probably going to do this again, especially if they want to get Conor McGregor in a quote-unquote title fight. This is a participation trophy belt. A participation trophy belt. That's what this is. And honestly, I think it's an embarrassment to the sport. I think it's an embarrassment to the UFC. I know they announced it because, let's overshadow Francis Ngannou and his big deal and his big contract with PFL. But I love 291. This is a stain on the card. And if this continues, if we start having, imagine every year we got like 2 BMF title main events and pay-per-views. I don't know if I can handle that. I'd rather watch Juliana Pena. Hot take. I'd rather watch Juliana Pena fight Amanda Nunes in the trilogy that got canceled than watch a BMF belt be defended by guys who aren't the BMF. Because if they're the BMF, then why do we even have a world undisputed champion? Why do we have a world champion? If Islam Makhachev isn't the best, then why do we even have that belt? And we're having multiple belts float around. And the people who are cheerleading this, the WWE fanboys, I just really don't get it. People complain about boxing all the time. Oh, there's too many boxing belts and there's too many different organizations and people can't understand what's going on. You're essentially doing the same thing to the UFC. You're watering down the product. You're delegitimizing the actual world title, all for the sake of maybe drawing in some casuals. That's basically it in terms of benefits. I hate it. I think it ruins the card. I think it's a stain on the card. And the real reason I believe the UFC is actually doing this, and I talked about this in my other UFC 291 video, which is far more positive. So if you hate this video that I'm hating on UFC 291 and the BMF belt, go watch that video. I'll link it down in the description. I focus solely on the fights. Briefly discussed the BMF belt, but I said I would make a dedicated video on it. And, I'll link that down in the description if you want to go check that out. But I mentioned this in that video as well. I believe the real reason they are doing this, and nobody's talking about it, not a media member is talking about it, and nobody's going to ask Dana White. I want somebody to ask Dana White. I believe they are contractually obligated. They have a deal with ESPN. ESPN Plus is the sole distributor of their pay-per-view events. I believe in that deal, the UFC is required to have a title on the line in the main event of a pay-per-view fight card. Because ESPN's paying the UFC a flat rate for the pay-per-views. ESPN is making all the money from the pay-per-view. And I think a deal, a condition in that deal is to have a title fight headlining every pay-per-view. And I know people are going to say, well, what about Conor and this and this and that? And there's been a couple non-title fights that have headlined ESPN, but I think they have to get exceptions for those. And I think those have to be mega fights, whether it be Nate Diaz, who is a massive star, or Conor McGregor. It has to be these huge fights where the UFC can kind of say, look, I know there's not a title on the line, but we're still going to do very well with this card. We don't need to get we can get an exemption for this easily because, it's already going to sell itself. We don't need a title belt. And you don't need a title belt to sell the card anyway, especially this card. But I guess there's some casuals. And I think the UFC doesn't want to get that exemption. They don't want to get that exemption from ESPN. It probably, maybe they think it hurts their negotiating value in the future. And who knows, the people at ESPN, they may have no idea what's really going on. They may be disconnected from the MMA world. And they're like, oh, BMF belt. Yeah, UFC's really selling it. Dana White's like a cheesy car salesman behind the scenes saying, yeah, this BMF belt, everyone loves this BMF belt. It's literally selling wolf tickets, to quote Nick Diaz. It's the same as, oh, we got an island lined up. Fight Island, that gimmick. It's a gimmick. Fight Island was just Abu Dhabi that they have been before, Yaz Island. But they made it seem like, oh, we're buying an island that has no infrastructure and we're setting up UFC fights. And the fan base ate it up. And I don't think it's going to be the same with this BMF belt where the fan base is going to eat it up. And I think it's going to get old real quick if they keep doing this. And then what happens after this? Like, really, what's going to happen with Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje after they get that BMF belt wrapped around their waist? And who's going to wrap it around their waist? Because if I have to see another pro wrestler wrap a belt around a fighter's waist, it was so corny. I was there live at UFC 244. The walkout of The Rock with the BMF belt, him throwing it up in the air, and then him wrapping it around Jorge Masvidal's waist after winning by doctor stoppage was some of the cringiest moments in MMA. It's right up there, in my opinion. This is going to sound crazy. It's right up there with Jessica Evil Eye, here we go, evil, here we go. That chant. If you don't know, I posted it on my Instagram a couple months ago, at MMA Joey C. Go check it out. Cringy as hell, probably the cringiest moment in MMA history. Jessica Evil Eye. UFC 244, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, BMF belt, right up there with it. And I just don't think you need it. I don't think you need it. I think the UFC should have just done this card. They should have got an exemption from ESPN. They said, look, this is one of the best fights we can make for UFC 291. Dustin Poirier is a top contender. Look at all of his exciting fights. Justin Gaethje, top contender. Look at all his exciting fights. And that could have been enough. And they stacked the card underneath of it. And they did the same for UFC 244. They stacked the card underneath of it. And, you know, this is just one of those moments where I think the UFC is just continuing down that slippery slope. And who knows what's going to be next? Is there going to be an intercontinental belt? Is there going to be tag team belts soon? And I just think you slowly start to go down that path. It's hard to walk it back. It's hard to walk it back. And I know there's going to be the WWE cheerleaders who want people to get hit with steel chairs and shillelaghs and, you know, get the people's elbow. I'm not one of those people. I watch to watch the best fight the best. That's what I watch this sport for. And I think a lot of people agree with me. They watch it to see the best versus the best. Of course, do we love a little backstory? Do we love a little bit of drama? You know, there's nothing better than the Israel Adesanya Alex Pereira story. And that wasn't WWE. That wasn't fake drummed up drama and a fake belt on the line. It's two of the best in the world fighting over who's the best in the world and fighting with a great backstory. This didn't need it. I hate the BMF belt, but I really do believe they're doing it because they are contractually obligated by ESPN to have a belt on the line. And I think it really looms large over UFC 291. And I know Ariel Helwani is probably touching himself to the news of the BMF belt, and Mark Ramondi's probably doing the same, and all the Colby Covington fans, all, 15 of them are probably like, yeah, I love the BMF belt. That's probably what they're setting Colby up for next. He doesn't have a single win over a ranked contender in his entire MMA career who's currently ranked in the top 15. So if he loses to Leon Edwards, he's challenging for the BMF belt next. He's coming after Dustin Poirier if he wins the BMF belt. He's coming after Justin Gaethje if he wins the BMF belt. Dustin Poirier already has issues with Colby Covington. So does Justin Gaethje. There you go. So basically, you have a rotating BMF belt of who can't be the champion in the division. That's essentially what this belt stands for, is second best, and not even that, really. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Am I overreacting, or do you hate this as much as I do? Is there anyone out there that loves it? Let me know. Comment down below if you absolutely love the BMF belt. And then send me your address, please, because I need an exact retribution on you for even thinking that. But don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.